Hi, I'm Jack Koenig with Graco Industrial Lubrication Equipment, and today I'm going to show you how to update the firmware on a G3 Max with DMS. This video would also apply to the Electric Grease Jockey pumps with the DMS feature included. When you first power up a pump, it displays its firmware version. 0707 is the current firmware version for this G3. I'm going to update this to firmware version 0708 today and show you how to do it in the field. You'll need a computer and also a USB flash drive. This is what's called a USB Type A. That's the traditional flat style. And the format of the drive itself needs to be called FAT32. FAT32 is a file format used by computers. Some newer high-capacity flash drives use a different format, and the G3 might have problem reading that drive. So try to find a drive that is maybe a cheaper drive or an older one that has the FAT32 file system on it, and then the G3 will be able to read it. Next, let's go to the computer and show how to load the G3 firmware onto your drive. Before you upload the firmware, first you need the file with the firmware data. The name of the file is g3image.hex. You may already have this on your local hard drive or on a network folder, or maybe you received an email from our tech assistance group with the file attached. Here's a look at Gmail, and it's attached here. If you receive this in Gmail, you first need to click the download button and save it to your local computer, then go either to your downloads folder or whatever other folder you have set to receive downloads from Gmail. Once you have it in a local folder, the easiest way to send it to your flash drive is first make sure your flash drive is plugged in, but then right-click the file and scroll down here to Send To, and then Removable Disk. When you click on that, it copies the file over. Otherwise, you can also copy it by dragging and dropping. Here it's gonna ask me if I want to make a copy because it's already there. I'm just going to cancel that. Otherwise, you can right click and choose copy and then go over to your flash drive folder and hit paste. And again, it's already there, so I'm not going to do that. The one key detail is make sure that you don't put this file into a subfolder. You want to be at the top level of your flash drive and make sure that you drop that g3image.hex file right there at that top level. Otherwise, the G3 pump won't be able to find it, and you'll get an error code when you try to perform the procedure that I'm going to demonstrate. Okay, so now that we have the file, make sure you do the correct procedure to eject the flash drive from your computer. To safely remove the devices, and mine's called Ultra, so eject Ultra. There, now I can remove my flash drive, and we'll go put this in the G3 and upload the new firmware. Updating the firmware is a pretty quick operation, and it's fairly simple, but there is a little bit of a trickiness to it. First, you need to disconnect power from the pump. Then we're going to open the USB flash drive cover and put our flash drive into the pump. Now, while we reconnect power, we also have to hold the up arrow at the same time. There, now boot is being displayed. The lights are flashing. I can let go and let it do its thing. When the software begins updating, the warning light is flashing and the display continues to show boot. Do not remove the flash drive or disconnect power during this step. Make sure the update is complete before you do anything. After the new firmware is done installing, the new revision is displayed for 1 second. In this case, the new revision is 0708. The pump will display data and then done when the upgrade process is fully complete. Now, to verify that this was done successfully, let's disconnect power, remove our flash drive, and put the power cord back on again. Now we see 0708 is the firmware version, so this pump was updated successfully. Whenever you're working with the DMS feature, be sure that you replace the USB cover when you're done. You don't want water to get in there, so that cover is there for a reason. Make sure you put it back on when you're finished. Now let's cover a few of the errors that are sometimes encountered during this process and the ways to correct them. I've taken my USB drive and only inserted it part way. Sometimes people also find a way to jam the drive in backwards, which is not good for the drive or the USB port on the G3. So the correct thing to do is to make sure that you have the drive oriented correctly and that you push it all the way in. If it's only halfway in, sometimes you'll get the error I'm going to display now. The system is showing boot, and the boot is just going to stay there a long time and not go away because it is trying to load the program, but it doesn't have a good connection to the USB drive, so it's just sitting there flashing and it won't be able to update. If you see this happen, disconnect power, remove the USB drive, and put it back in. Make sure it's in the right way and that it's all the way in. Then hold down the up arrow and reconnect the power to it to begin the process over again. The next error I'm going to show you is error 28. This is displayed when you either don't put the firmware file onto the USB drive at all, or if you put it in the wrong place, like putting it into a subfolder. It basically just means that the G3 can't find the file that it needs to read to do the update. See, the red light's on already there, error 28. It's telling you that there is no image file to read and update the firmware. So we're going to disconnect power, and at this point you'd have to go back to your computer and put your USB drive into the computer again and make sure that you're putting that G3 image.hex at the top level of your USB drive and not into one of the folders on the drive. The next error that you might encounter is basically caused by a lack of patience. As you saw during the demonstration, it takes a couple minutes for the program to upload. Let's see what happens if you pull the drive out too soon. So it's in the boot mode, and now let's pull it out. There's error 14. That means that I pulled the drive out before the update process was complete. The way to rectify this is to simply start over and leave the drive in until it says data and done. And at that point you can remove the drive. Now I'm going to show you error 19, which refers to a corrupt file. So that G3 image.hex, if that file gets corrupted, then you can get error 19. In this case, my corrupt file showed error 14 instead. So it thinks I removed the drive because of how messed up the file was. So that's good to know that error 14 and error 19 can just mean that something's wrong with the file, even if the drive's inserted all the way. So the way to correct this would be to go back to your computer, put the USB drive in the computer, delete the G3 image.hex file from the drive, go back to where you originally got the file, whether it be from an email from us or on a network folder somewhere, and copy and paste the file over again. So basically redo the whole process and then put the drive back in and repeat the process to do it correctly. After doing it wrong multiple times on this unit, let's fix it and make it right before we put this thing away. Did you see how 7215 was displayed as the firmware? Maybe someday that'll be a real firmware version, but right now it's not. So that was another sign that it was done incorrectly before. Now we're just going to wait until boot goes away, and it should show 0708, and then a moment later it'll show data and done, and then we know that we have done this correctly. There we go. Now we can remove the drive. Like I said before, make sure you put the cap back on the USB port, and we are done updating firmware on this pump.